The game was something the neighbors had introduced to us. Well, I don't exactly mean neighbors since they lived a whole block away, but Terry and I were in the same grade at school, and my parents were close friends with his. The Kentai family had a whole bunch of kids, 10 in total. Most of them were older than us, and one of them was even married with a kid of his own. Every summer, on warm weekends or free days, my sister and I would go over to their house while our parents worked. This was the routine ever since I hit 13. One summer, when Mom started her new shifts at the hospital, she worked nights for a week at a time, then switched back to days. We'd go over to the Kenny's house after 10 when Mom would finally go to bed after her shift. Then, we'd swing by the house again to grab whatever food she'd left in the fridge for us, and head back over to keep playing. It was strange, and Mom always felt bad about it, but honestly, we were mature enough for it, I think. Charlotte and I really enjoyed hanging out with the Kentais. They were competitive, sure, and a little out there sometimes, but so were we. In a way, I felt like I grew up as part of their family. It never felt tiring or awkward spending hours with them, we all just clicked. Their home had this welcoming vibe, and it didn't hurt that they had a PlayStation, ripsticks, and endless ideas for fun, like running around the park, messing around at the splash pad, or seeing where the plows had dumped mountains of snow in the parking lot. Looking back, I realize how often Terry's wild ideas almost got us killed. Racing down the alleyway between our houses at breakneck speeds, that time a dog chased us, forcing us to leap over a fence to escape, and our makeshift boat races on a quiet lake, they all seemed like the best ideas at the time. That's just the way kids think, right? So when Terry brought up this game called White Wolf one evening while we were hanging out at the park near my house, I was kind of surprised I'd never heard of it before. We'd already played every game I could think of in our years of hanging out at the Kenny's place. "You've never played it?" he asked. "Nope, never heard of it. We play it all the time. My cousins and I do it at my uncle's camp." "Really?" I asked. "Yeah, it's way better when it's warmer and the nights are longer. White Wolf was a game you played around dusk, right as the sun was setting. You didn't need a lot of people, but it was definitely more fun with a bigger crowd. First, you pick a base," Terry explained, scanning the area before pointing to an old wooden picnic table. "Something big or easy to spot." Grace, one of his older sisters, chimed in. "We use a stump at Uncle Anthony's camp," she added. "Yeah, that's it." Terry continued. "So, what you do is, you pick someone to be it." Carrie, another Kentai sister, interrupted. "Shut up, I'm telling it." Terry shot back. "Fine, whatever," Carrie muttered. "Anyway," Terry went on, "the person whose it is the White Wolf. Everyone else hides while they count. We usually go to like," Grace began. 100, shouted Lewis, the second youngest. "Or 500, by fives," added someone else. "It's the same thing." Terry groaned. "Quit it," he yelled. "So, they count, and everyone hides. Once they're done, the White Wolf starts searching. If the wolf gets too close, the hider." The whole group of Kentai kids screamed in unison, which made both Charlotte and me jump. "White Wolf," they shouted. "Guys, come on!" Terry yelled, covering his face with his hands. We all laughed. According to Terry, though, once someone yells out the White Wolf, everyone has to run to the base before the wolf tags them. "So, if the wolf touches you, are you next?" I asked. "No," Lewis replied seriously, making a slicing motion across his neck. "You're dead if they get you." After some debate over how to pick the next White Wolf, Grace grabbed a bunch of tall, grassy weeds by the fence. She counted out 6, then trimmed the ends so they were even, except for one. She mixed them up in her hands, and we all picked one. I ended up with the shortest stalk, which meant I was the White Wolf. I turned my back toward the parking lot and pretended to cover my eyes, making a big show of it so nobody would accuse me of peeking. I counted to 100 and then yelled, "Ready or not, here I come." It felt a little silly, but it was a habit. As I turned around and saw the quiet park before me, excitement bubbled up inside. The crickets were singing from the baseball field nearby, and even the breeze seemed softer. I took a step forward, scanning for any hint of movement, maybe a shoe sticking out from a slide or someone darting behind the trees. The gravel crunched under my feet, but otherwise, I stayed as silent as I could. I climbed onto the first platform of the playground, creeping past the tunnels leading to the monkey bars. No one yet. I swung across, landing quietly on the next section of the playground. Then, I spotted it, Lewis's hand sticking out from inside the next slide. He was hiding in there, but the angle I was at let me catch a glimpse of him. The fading light made it harder to see, but my eyes were adjusting. I moved slowly, silently stepping onto the short bridge leading to the slide entrance. Like a ninja. I peeked around the corner, and our eyes met. White Wolf! Lewis screamed, sliding down the rest of the way as I swiped at the empty space where he'd been. The park exploded with sound. Carrie dropped from a tree. Terry came sprinting out from behind a porta-potty. Grace scooped up Lewis as she ran past. Charlotte bolted from the dugout. The movement happened so fast I nearly forgot what I was supposed to do next. I slid down the playground slide, hot on Carrie's heels, who was the farthest from the base, hidden up in her tree. She laughed as she easily jogged away, outpacing me with her long legs. I watched her reach the picnic table, where everyone had gathered, with plenty of time to spare. I collapsed on the ground, groaning in defeat, and rolled onto my back as we all burst into laughter, trying to catch our breath. Once the laughter died down and I regained my composure, a thought hit me. Wait a second. I didn't tag anyone. What happens now? Terry, sitting next to me, shrugged. Well, you've got to go hunt again. Maybe this time you'll have better luck. Just then, we heard the familiar sound of Dad's whistle in the distance, causing both Charlotte and me to snap our heads around. It was Dad calling us. Shoot, I muttered. All right, next time, we'll pick this up again. I shouted back to them as I started heading for home. Years passed by. We moved away from the Kentais when Mom got a better job offer at a hospital in a state far away. Charlotte and I grew up, graduated, and eventually left home. She followed in Mom's footsteps, pursuing a career in medicine. As for me, I went to Boise State University, slogged through grad school for a while, and eventually found a job teaching American history at a local high school. I met Anna, we got married, and life went on. The Kentais faded into the background of my life, appearing only as fleeting memories, little things like a funny phrase Lewis once said or a late-night gaming session with Terry. It wasn't that I had forgotten them, they had been such a huge part of my childhood that I couldn't just erase them. But life had moved on. So, it was a shock one morning when I saw an email from Carrie pop up in my inbox. I was sipping coffee and almost burned the roof of my mouth when I saw her name. The sudden rush of recognition had Anna peeking over my shoulder at the screen. Dear Marcus, I'm really sorry for the random message. I'm sure you probably don't even remember me. I found your email through your mom's Facebook. Sounds stalkerish, I know. But this is a bit of a desperate reach. Something's not right with Terry. Actually, something's been off with him for a while now. He's been living at Uncle Anthony's old camp after getting into trouble with the law. He's made a lot of bad decisions. I've gone up there with Dad and Grace a few times to try to talk some sense into him, but nothing's working. Mom's barely holding it together, and no one seems to be getting through to him. I know it's a long shot, and I'm sure you're not a kid anymore, but if you're reading this, please reply. You're still considered his closest friend, and honestly, probably the only one he'll listen to right now. Carolyn Archer. Anna, convinced the email was some sort of scam, gave me a skeptical look. But as soon as I read Carrie's words, all those summers, all those memories came rushing back. I ended up telling Anna the whole story. After a bit of convincing, I decided to reply. Carrie and I exchanged phone numbers, and we spoke that afternoon. Terry's story was a far cry from what I remembered. He graduated from junior high with high honors, got a full scholarship to a college down south, and started what should have been the perfect university life. That's when he met Sean Jameson. Terry had brought Sean home once or twice to visit. He was just weird, Carrie said. He was all hippie and fucked the system, which would have been cool if he wasn't completely out of his mind. He kept talking about the return. Said something about abandoning society and going back to living like hunters and gatherers. The more Terry hung out with Sean, the less he seemed like himself. First, he grew his hair out. Then, he started dressing like a bum, as Mr. and Mrs. Kentai put it. He stopped going to church, stopped going to class, and started showing signs of fatigue, dark circles under his eyes. His grades plummeted. Then he stopped coming home. He lost his scholarship, was placed on academic probation, and eventually expelled for possession of drugs. Terry was in a bad place. What happened to Sean? Anna asked, sounding curious. Disappeared, Carrie replied flatly. Last time Terry mentioned him, he was talking about South America, or at least, I think he was. He was so out of it, I could barely understand him. Carrie's voice cracked, the emotion still fresh. Terry? A drug addict? The thought hit me like a freight train. I could still picture the kid, tangled brown hair, a goofy grin, always covered in scrapes or bruises, constantly showing me his latest injury. Terry? The same kid who climbed the pine tree to rescue Charlotte's kite. How had he gone from that to this? After we finished the call, I sat there, stunned. I turned to Anna, and even though neither of us said a word, we both knew what the other was thinking. I immediately opened my laptop to book a plane ticket to Wyoming. Anna headed upstairs to pack a bag for me. 36 hours later, I landed in Sheridan. Everything looked exactly as it had in my memories, streets I could navigate without thinking, the car practically driving itself down familiar roads. When I pulled up in front of the Kentai house, it looked dimmer than I remembered. The crabapple tree by the door, the one I'd fallen from and broken my wrist on, was gone. I could still see the paint stains on the brick near the door where Charlotte and Louis had decorated for Easter. But the most striking thing was Mrs. Kentai standing at the front door, waving like I'd just ridden up on my bike. I was only there for a short while, and per Carrie's request, I didn't mention why I was in town. I could see the exhaustion in Mr. Kenny's demeanor, and I feared Mrs. Kenny's reaction if I told her I was there to see Terry. So, I lied. I told them I was just passing through on my way to Casper. That didn't stop them from keeping me there for an hour longer, stuffing my car with muffins, trail mix, and what I'm pretty sure was a whole roasted chicken. It struck me then, how in the world were all the Kentai kids not over 300 pounds? Mrs. Kentai fed everyone like it was a competition, but maybe all the running around kept them in check. When I finally got back on the road, I plugged in the address Carrie had given me. I realized I'd be reaching the camp just before the sun dipped below the horizon. Perfect timing, driving in the dark wasn't something I looked forward to. The drive was surprisingly peaceful. The hills, the trees, and the small towns I passed reminded me of camping trips from my childhood. We never had our own camp, but Dad did his best to get us out in nature as much as possible. We'd camp under thick sleeping bags, gazing up at the stars like little specks on a dark canvas. We'd fish, cook over the fire, hike, swim, everything about it was magical to me. Was Terry all right? Maybe he was detoxing. That would explain some of his irritability. Carrie hadn't been very clear about what was going on with him. From her cryptic words, I half expected to meet some kind of beastly, nonverbal version of Terry. But if he'd been getting his act together, maybe the fresh mountain air and solitude were doing their job. Maybe I'd turn the corner and find him sitting in a hammock with a National Geographic magazine. As I reached the lip of the road and pulled into the driveway, I could already see the camp in the fading light. It wasn't exactly modest, 2 stories of log cabin style with a large patch of grass surrounding it. There was an open garage to one side, canoes lining the walls, and a kayak tucked under a tarp. Terry's Honda sat there too, a sorry sight, muddy, covered in bird droppings, and grass creeping through the tires. Across the yard, I noticed a woodshed, a miniature version of the main house. The rhythmic sound of someone chopping would reach my ears. I killed the engine and stepped out of the car, slamming the door behind me. Terry? I called, hesitantly. The tension in my chest flared. What if I was wrong? What if I was walking right into the territory of some unhinged guy, a convict who was high on something and ready to go off at any moment? I had just driven myself into the middle of nowhere with someone who could be armed with an axe. I almost turned back, but then a head poked out from behind the shed. Hey! A shirtless, bearded man with long hair pulled back stepped around the corner. The way he moved made it clear, it was still Terry. As he walked toward me, I realized, despite the years that had passed and the changes in him, he was still my best friend. He closed the distance between us and stopped just a few feet away. Lost, friend? He was still holding the axe. I cleared my throat, trying to shake off the nerves. Hey, Terry. It's me, Mark Dash. His face shifted in an instant. Jesus Christ. He pulled me into a bear hug so tight it almost knocked the wind out of me. The axe clattered to the ground, and I exhaled in relief. He smelled like sweat and wood smoke. Oh my God, you're really here. He held me at arm's length, inspecting me closely. His voice was deeper than I remembered, and as he stood there, I noticed how much stronger he had gotten. Terry used to be a couple inches shorter than me, something I used to tease him about. Now, he was my height and broader, his muscles more defined. Time in the wilderness had transformed him into someone new. His grip on my arms was firm, controlled. This wasn't the guy I expected to find. I had braced myself for someone emaciated or strung out, maybe even someone I would have to carry out of there. But Terry looked better than I ever imagined. His grin, his laugh, they were the same, though deeper now. And his heart was as kind as ever. Come on in. You hungry? I caught some trout earlier. I was gonna fry it up, and I think we've still got some raspberries. If not, we can go get them tomorrow. It was the best dinner I'd had in ages. Maybe it was because I was so hungry, but really, the company made all the difference. Terry told me about the forest, his forest. He spoke of a river that cut through the mountain, where he got his drinking and shower water. He was finishing a well for the house but didn't go into too much detail. He also mentioned a bobcat that had passed through the area a month ago and how a family of cardinals had taken up residence in the eaves of the woodshed. Afterward, Terry grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, and we went out on the porch, watching the stars come out. From where we sat, I could see it, a stump, immediately recognizable as the base where the Kentai kids and I used to gather, playing our games of White Wolf. The reason I was there came rushing back. I turned to look at Terry, this quintessential mountain man, sipping a beer, shirtless in the evening breeze. Part of me wanted to just stay quiet, hang out with him for a few more days, and let him be. He seemed content, at peace with himself. Did Dad send you? He asked. It was a simple question, but I felt a heavy weight settle in my stomach, like he was accusing me. No, I replied. Mom, he asked again. Carrie, I said, pausing before adding, they're just worried about you, you know? I don't know all the details, and I'm sorry I wasn't in touch sooner. Maybe if I had reached out, things would have been different. I don't know if they would have been, he said quietly. What do you mean? Marcus, I know I screwed up. And I know that Mom and Dad might never forgive me, even if I came back. My choices have consequences. But look around us. Look at me. This is the happiest I've been in years. Yeah, Sean wasn't the best influence, but he taught me what I needed to learn. I'm a better man for it. Even if you never moved away, I feel like I would have ended up here anyway. I think I was always meant to be here. This place? Terry turned in his seat, locking eyes with me. Mom and Dad always thought Sean was some kind of out there, hippie nutcase. They were totally wrong, but they missed the point. Sean talked a lot about this, about the trees, nature, the whole cycle. Do you really think humans are gonna win in the end? It took me a second to realize he wasn't asking rhetorically. Well, no. Once we're gone, I don't think we'll leave much behind, I answered, unsure where he was going with this. Terry slapped the arm of his chair, laughing loudly. Exactly. You get it. All this, it's all temporary. Grass grows through pavement, roots push up sidewalks, roads wash away in floods. It all goes back to nature in the end. I thought of something Carrie had mentioned. It will all return. And so will we, Terry said, his eyes shifting back toward the sky. Sean knew that. He wasn't gonna wait for it. He found a way to skip the middleman. The conversation had turned in a direction I hadn't expected, one that made my gut tighten. What did Sean do? Terry finished his drink, setting the empty bottle on the ground with a soft CA clink. What would you do, he began slowly, if you knew you could control your death? I blinked. What? Sean found a way to control how and when he left this world. Even figured out how to stretch out his time here, keep existing longer. He told me how to do it too. I've been working on it, pulling away from society, getting deeper into the woods. I'm in better shape than I've ever been, better than back in school. I cracked the code. The more open your mind is, the easier it is to come back. But, he flexed his arm, the muscles rippling. The stronger your body is, the more control you'll have when you return. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But I had to stay calm, assess the situation. Terry wasn't on anything. One bottle of beer wasn't going to make someone talk like this. Maybe he was spiraling, but was it bad enough that I should call the authorities? Or get him help? I was lost in my thoughts when I realized Terry had stood up. He was heading toward the stump in the back. I watched him run his hand along its rough surface, his gaze fixed on it. Marcus? Yeah, Terry? I asked, unsure what was coming next. You don't have to say yes. You can laugh and go to bed, or drive off, whatever. But, will you play White Wolf with me again? Just one more time. The request hit me like a wave. We used to play for hours when we were kids. The game felt like something bigger back then, like it carried more weight than it should have, something we all took way too seriously. We flipped a coin to see who was it. When Terry turned to count, I bolted toward the house, making a racket on the gravel driveway before sneaking back around the side of the house, trying to throw him off my trail. It felt like we were back in middle school, sneaking out late, playing games that always felt a little more important than they should have. There was one thing I didn't mention about our White Wolf games, the hiding strategy. You had to find a good spot, but also one you could escape from quickly if the wolf got too close. As a kid, I'd hide in trees with wide branches, closed-topped slides, or behind fallen logs, places I could keep an eye on the wolf. But now, I wasn't going into the woods, and there weren't many good places for a grown man to hide. I turned my head, scanning the area for anything that might work. My eyes settled on the woodshed and its strange roofline. The roof didn't quite meet the walls. I could hear Terry's voice in the distance, somewhere near 50 counts. I had to move fast. The door was locked, but the key hung in the kitchen. I knew he wouldn't bother checking inside. I made my way to the shed, quickly scaling the wall, using the edges of the structure for handholds. Once I was on top of the wall, I squeezed myself through the gap and balanced carefully, clutching the sides of the roof and walls to steady myself. I felt around blindly for a foothold. There was something, maybe a stack of uncut logs or some buckets, piled in the corner. I found a place to put my left foot and adjusted so I could peek through the top. When we started, I was worried it might be too dark, but now, with the moon full and the light from the house spilling farther than I expected, I knew Terry would have no problem seeing me. I was still facing the woods, but the gap gave me a quick escape route if I needed it. I knew. No one else was around to shout White Wolf, too. If Terry caught me, the game was over. But this wasn't just a game. I wasn't doing this for myself. I was doing it for my best friend. Terry stopped counting. My breath froze, listening. I expected him to check the garage or maybe the parked cars. But what I heard next made my blood run cold, the soft rustle of grass. Heavy steps. And, was that ragged breathing? If Terry was trying to mess with me, it was working. I sank lower, shifting my weight onto my left leg, straining to peer over the edge of the wall. Then I saw him. He came into view behind the shed, glancing over his shoulder and scanning the yard like something was hunting him. His chest was heaving, like he'd just run a marathon, and his muscles twitched and jerked beneath his skin. What happened next, I can't explain it. It all took place in less than a minute, yet it felt like I was frozen there, watching for hours. Terry collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Each breath came out in ragged bursts that made my chest tighten in sympathy. He coughed violently, flecks of spit turning into foamy droplets on the grass. The sounds coming from his throat were so raw and harsh, I couldn't believe the effort of breathing hadn't torn him apart. I opened my mouth, "Are you okay?" on the tip of my tongue, but it never came out. Suddenly, Terry's right shoulder jerked backward, his spine snapping upward. A sickening crack split the air, and he screamed, still coughing, as the other shoulder followed suit. The skin on his back stretched and bruised, contorting with the unnatural shift in his bones. My jaw dropped, and I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to process what I was seeing. His arm fell limp from his chest as he slumped to the ground, still choking. But now it was different. His coughing was offbeat, erratic, almost rhythmic. His gaze flickered toward the house again, and the terror in his eyes hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd seen that look once before, when we were kids, sneaking into a yard, and a dog had broken free from its leash, snapping at us. I'd boosted him over the fence just in time, and that same raw fear had flashed in his eyes then. Terry struggled weakly, pushing himself up onto all fours, gasping in agony. The ripple of movement under his skin was back, heading for his neck. Without warning, his arms jerked forward with a sickening crack, bones grinding against each other, twisting his tendons. His fingers curled at odd angles, and he screamed again, this time with tears streaming down his face. He was trying to stand, but his legs were barely holding him. He used what little strength he had left, his body shaking, his muscles spasming violently. My ears were ringing, the world around me drowned out by static. I couldn't hear anything except the terrifying sounds of his body twisting and contorting. My mind screamed at me to move, to yell, to help him, but my body was frozen, paralyzed by fear. Crunch! Another awful sound. Terry's knee buckled backward, popping out of its socket, pulling the rest of his leg with it. His body twisted unnaturally, the skin stretched over broken bones, leaving a horrific sight of mangled limbs. He was still in his jeans, but in a frantic frenzy, he clawed at them with his disfigured arms and twisted nails. I couldn't tell if his hip had dislocated, but his thighs seemed unnaturally short. His body was reshaping itself, muscles and bones breaking, his skin folding in on itself in impossible ways. The other leg twisted too, and at the same time, his feet began to stretch, the bones in his heels extending, growing longer and longer. The cries and sobs that tore from him were agonizing. At first, it seemed like he was trying to power through it, but soon his groans turned into shrieks, shrieks that broke apart into desperate pleas. He called for his mom, for his dad, for his siblings, for God, for anyone who might answer. His words became a garbled mess, threats, promises, cries for mercy, all mixed with the sickening sound of his body continuing to deform. I think we both vomited at the same time. I know I did. When I wiped my mouth and looked back, his bloodshot eyes were locked onto mine. And Marcus. His voice was a broken whisper, raw and full of pain. His nose was bleeding, and he was staring at me with those pleading, tortured eyes. He gritted his teeth, pushing what was left of his arm up toward me. His fingers twitched, still trying to reach out, like a memory of the boy I used to know, the Terry who climbed over fences, who never backed down from anything. But this time, he couldn't outrun the dog. His hand fell to the ground with a sickening thud, followed by the rest of his twisted limbs. His back arched, and I heard his spine snap and stretch as his body continued to morph, his pelvis bulging and bruising. Marcus, please. My mouth went dry. My hands clenched onto the wall, the wood splintering under my grip. Bile dripped from my lips, staining my shirt. Help me. I wanted to stop it. I wanted to jump over that wall and fix him, pull him from this nightmare. I wanted to go back to the park, to that night, and never play the game. I wanted to go to college with him, to have a future where none of this ever happened. I wanted to kill Sean. I wanted to kill Terry. I wanted it to end, but I didn't know how. Terry, my voice wasn't my own anymore. It cracked, sounding like the terrified kid I used to be, broken and desperate. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was watch as my best friend, my brother, fell apart before me. My ARR dashed his head tilted back, too far. There was a sickening pop as his vertebrae snapped. His skull caved in, above his forehead, like it couldn't hold together anymore. Something was wrong with his throat. It looked like his windpipe was pushing its way up, trying to force its way out of his neck. The skin stretched and split, and I saw black. A deep, oily black, slick and shining, was forcing its way out of Terry's throat. It glistened in the pale moonlight, and it was growing, swelling, more of it pushing through every second. Terry's face had collapsed, his eyes were dark and hollow, but somehow he kept screaming. His tears had turned red, hot, like fresh blood, marking the deflated, sickly skin of his face. And then that thing, whatever it was, grew larger on his throat. What the hell was that? A snout began to push through, a twisted mockery of Terry's face. Jaws, sharp white teeth glinting like a nightmare, tore through the skin. It was like his broken teeth had come alive. There was a sickly yellow-white crust on the nose of whatever was emerging, something fetid, like the stench of a rotten egg or a burst of an embryonic sac. The flap of skin that used to be Terry's face dropped to his chest, sagging with the weight of its emptiness. The long hair, once neatly tied, came loose, sticking to his slick, sweat-drenched skin. Terry's final scream rang out, bouncing off the trees and echoing in the shed with me. It was free, wild, and raw. But the twisted, skin-covered creature that had once been my best friend fell silent, trembling like a newborn animal on the cold ground. I must have stared at it for what felt like hours, frozen in place. And then, it twitched. Its head lifted slowly, and our eyes met. There was nothing human left in those eyes. No trace of the boy I'd known. What stared back at me were the eyes of an animal, deep, dark, and full of something primal. It got to its feet, its hind legs pushing it up without hesitation, without the wobble I expected. Seeing that mangled body move with such unnatural ease made my stomach churn. A lump at the base of its back began to grow, and I watched in horror as a tail emerged, slimy and sickly. Its entire body was covered in a fine coat of hair, fine enough that it seemed to glow in the pale light. It turned, the creature's glowing outline fading as it trotted toward the edge of the woods. Before it vanished into the darkness, it glanced back at me. And as it melted into the shadows, I heard myself speak. White Wolf. I didn't mean to say it. But I said it in a whisper, my throat raw, my voice barely a breath. I stayed in that shed for hours. Hours that stretched into nothingness, until I had cried myself dry, my eyes swollen, my stomach empty. I stayed until the first light of dawn broke through the trees. When I finally felt like I could move, like the world had somehow shifted and I was still alive, I climbed out of that shed. I've been driving since then. I don't know why. Maybe I'll return the rental. Maybe I'll just buy it to get back home. I'll need a new plane ticket, but right now, it feels better to be on the road. I stopped just outside Denver, sitting at a gas station, writing this. I don't even know why I'm writing it. What's the point? Was I writing this for the police? Who would believe this? Do I send it to Carrie? Would she even believe me? Maybe if someone else finds this, someone who knows more about what happened, someone more qualified, maybe they can help me. I need answers. If you know a man by the name of Sean Jameson, please, for the love of God, contact me. If you know anything about him, anything at all, please reach out. I need to know what happened to Terry. Was it the game that destroyed him? Was it the people he was with? Or was it something bigger than all of us? Something beyond me, beyond Terry, beyond humanity? Whatever it was, keep yourself safe. Because I've seen what happens to those who are careless with their lives. I've seen the White Wolf.